Hey everybody, it's Andy Sokolovich here from UnleashStrengths.com with another episode of THEME-ADDICTS. THEME-ADDICTS is a show that we created just to focus on other people who have a love of strengths and strengths-based development. Today we have a special guest with us, Mr. Omar Mirza. Omar, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and start out by revealing your top five?
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Andy, for giving me a chance today to, be a part of your awesome show. I'm a Purdue University student. I went for pharmacy, and was really unhappy with what I was going for. And you know, in going through the process of soul searching, I went through Gallup and some of the awesome things. My top five are activator, VU, communication, ideation, and focus. And That's been an awesome journey thus far.
Yeah, sounds like it. That's amazing that you were able to, as you're progressing through your education, that you were able to kind of harness the power of strengths-based development this early on, so you can go ahead and use it to kind of focus on what you want to do with your life. We're all, I think everybody's at a point in their life, whether you're fresh out of high school or I'm 32, but I'm always trying to better myself, and I think education is something that never stops. So it's a great way to harness your strengths and then figure out how you're going to apply them to learn more and develop solid set of skills. So I applaud you for that.
Thank you.
So let's talk about who introduced you to StrengthsFinder and why. I mean, did you just stumble upon it? Did somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, Omar, you should really take this assessment"?
Yeah, good question. In the process of soul searching, when I was going through all kinds of websites, finding answers, going through all kinds of pages on Facebook, I got a good page which is called Call to Coach, and I think everyone should join that. That's a phenomenal resource to use, other than Gallup and Strength Finders itself, because you find tons of mentors and gurus there that know exactly what each strength's about, and they're extremely devoted to what they do. So all of that combined, I think, gave me answers and some insight about where do I belong, and it's been a fun journey so far. I'll tell you that for sure.
Great. So the assessment kind of just you just found it, and then you took the assessment, you got your top five, and then you started cruising around Facebook looking for special groups who were focused on helping you develop your natural talents. So nobody in particular came up to you and was like, "Hey, check out this book. You need to take this assessment."
Right, back in the day, I remember I'd bought the Strength Finders 2.0, phenomenal book, worldwide seller. And I think who actually, when did I give this test? I think at Purdue, they told me to just take this test because it was very renowned and well known, and they
Mm.
said just go ahead and take this test and a few others to just see where you fit in. So that's the primary focus where I started, but I wanted to know more answers as to what it all meant. So to seek those answers, the platform was you know. Uh, so forth. There was the call to coach page, and
And
that's
social
why.
media.
Yep, yep.
Yeah, there's what Omar's referring to. There's two just solid, massive amount of content and resource pages on Facebook. What the first one is called Call to Coach. It's a Gallup page, Call to Coach, and then there's another one called Gallup Strengths Finder. Both phenomenal resources and an excellent place for you to go cruise around, talk to other people who are interested in strengths, and that's how I got this whole show launched. I think if I'm not mistaken, everybody so far that's been a guest on this show has been a product of that Facebook group. So it is an awesome resource.
For sure. Yeah.
So since the day that you were made aware of your top five and you realized that hey, there's really something to this whole strengths based development thing. What does your strengths journey look like? Maybe you can give us a little bit of insight into how it developed from the start and where you are now.
For sure. This was one of the few tests I think is definitely everyone should take. It's gonna give you answers exactly the right way. It's not gonna just fool you around with different stuff. I don't know if is it okay if I was to. There's a few others out there that I took, and what I've seen so far is that this is the most substantial information you can get in the
Mhm.
shortest amount of time by giving tons of questions. It's been used by Stryker, it's used by Wells Fargo, and all these big places. So I think everyone should utilize it. My journey, how has my journey been so far on it? I think. I've had a good chance to meet tons of Gallup coaches and mentors that are devoted. Like I said, they have told me, for example, activators, Mr. Go Go Go, always on a run. When it combines with Mr. Woo, which is winning people over, I'd be the guy who's always trying to just please people around and making
Mhm.
sure I'm making a good impression on people. So I kind of can see how they all tie in together, and that gives me a strong indication of where do I belong. It's definitely not pharmacy because if you're being too creative and you all you want is winning people over, or you're just too active, I don't think it's the best thing. Andy, what do you think?
I think that activator woo combination is have you ever had to kind of temper that down? Do you find that that sometimes takes over as far as your top two dominant themes? And you're right, in the career of a pharmacy or a pharmacist or a pharmacy tech. I mean, it's not a lot of, yes, you're engaging people when they come up to pick up their prescriptions, but there's not a lot of social engagement going along. There's not a lot of, networking and
Right.
network building. So I think you can apply strengths into whatever career field you choose to take on or commit yourself to. But definitely, I mean, as you're in the early stages of your career development, which is a great place to be. I mean, you're a college student right now, and you're trying to figure out how these strengths can impact your life and the longevity and the prosperity of your personal and both professional life. So, I think that question's always up to the individual. If you can find a great way to kind of apply your strengths in a manner that allows you to do your job as best as you possibly can and you get engagement and enjoyment out of it, then you struck gold. I think if your strengths are impeding your enjoyment and your engagement, then you may need to try to seek some other different form of career.
Absolutely. I think you made a good point here that, but I think also something to realize here, strengths is not a career test. It's not going to give you which career to go into. So,
Absolutely.
and that's important. And I had to realize that it can be used for any profession by all means. At Purdue, I was very lucky to get a chance to meet the CEO of Walgreens, and we had a discussion about this that I truly am I passionate about pharmacy? Am I passionate about such a good school as Purdue that really, truly, pharmacy students there love research. They love talking
Hmm.
about all kinds of, updates coming out in the world, out there in the world of pharmacy. They love that. And he asked me and he questioned me about that. And he's like, "You seem like a go-getter, that you want to come talk to me and ask me these questions. And I can see an entrepreneurial mindset, but I am not too sure if I see a pharmacist in you." And
Hmm.
so that was like, oh, okay, this is one moment that, and I think it ties along when I had a chance to talk to a few people in Stryker, uh, medical devices sales. They said that Woo and Activator are the most needed things in this sector. Like you have to be on the go, and you have to be winning people over. Um, Other things there, I think there's tons of other strengths could be used alongside, but I think that's important for sure in sales, that as I see it.
You did several good things that I think everybody should do once they start understanding where their strengths lie and how can they apply them. But you took the initiative and you approached individuals who you didn't know the day before. You didn't know the CEO of Walgreens the day before. You didn't just knock on his door or send him a text message and say, "Hey, this is my assessment results. What do you think?" You approached him, and that takes guts and tenacity. And when you also reveal what your assessment has done for you or has represents in your activator and your woo. So those people, instead of just going up to somebody, now let's say let's say you didn't know anything about your strengths and you just went up to somebody and say, "Hey, do you think this pharmacy thing's good for me?" And they're going to say, "Well, I don't know you from Adam. I mean, I don't know you that well to give you." But if you said, "Hey, I took this StrengthsFinder assessment. Have you heard of it?" And they say, "Yeah, I've heard of it." And they said, "It was really insightful and it revealed to me that I'm an activator. I'm a go-getter.
Right.
I'm the guy that always wants to be on the move." And the second thing it revealed is and I acknowledge this to be fact is that I'm a woo guy. I'm a guy who wants to go out there and socialize and win other people over and share a message. And then they can say, "Okay, well, those two talents may not fit well behind the counter of a pharmacy, but however, they do fit really, really well, almost perfectly in pharmaceutical sales and in, like you mentioned, different types of medical equipment." So by
Absolutely.
sharing your top five, you allow people to get a little sneak peek inside, to kind of behind the curtain of how you're built, what you do, and how you operate. And that allows people to kind of not pass judgment, but give you solid advice and point you in the right direction.
Absolutely, Andy. Right on, right on. And that's what a lot of other CEOs that I've been contacting have been telling me. Same lesson, same thing that, it can be used for various professions
Uh,
and it's better suited for consulting or sales, and which is what I kind of like.
StrengthsFinder is a tool. I mean, it's not a cure-all. It's not a magic pill that you're going to take and all of a sudden,
Absolutely.
your life is going to complete focus and you'll never second guess yourself ever again. And if you put all of those eggs in that basket, then you're foolish. But
That's
it
right.
is, not only is it a tool, but it's a very sharp and insightful tool, and it's allowed people like yourself and people like myself
Right.
to kind of get a tighter hold on the reins of our life and the direction that we're heading, rather than just trying to kind of slosh through the puddle of life and figure out, where we're going to head next. It provides us with a solid sense of direction. And that's why I love it. And that's why I record this podcast, because I do think not only is it insightful, but it's very influential to people like just in your position here, trying to figure out what they want to do, what kind of
Absolutely.
profession they want to land into. So let's talk about the aha moment. Not everybody has an aha moment, but so far, I think I've every person I've interviewed has somehow experienced it, either with their top five or their bottom five. But I'm referring to the moment where you look at the assessment results and you go, "Wow, this is freaky insightful. Like this is almost too introspective." And I can't imagine that assessment that I just took, sitting behind the computer in a machine, in a machine, slap some answers in there, that this
Right.
was able to generate a vision of who I am and have it be so accurate.
Absolutely, man. I was thinking about this question because it's a good question you pose. The thing that I think as a kid, I was always on the go. I remember this still. We were at this place, with my sister and my little brother, and I was a little kid back then.
Mm-hmm.
She had there was this toy machine that she just put some coins in and she got a toy out of it and stuff. And I happened to have missed that moment, and so I still remember. And she always jokes about this with the how this was. I came at that moment and I saw like she had a toy and I was like so confused. I was looking around. How did that come? What did that happen? How did I miss it? I was
Mm-hmm.
extremely energetic, and I still remember this visually, just being. And they always make fun of me about this.
Mm-hmm.
So just being on the go. Other thing, I think another aha moment was for me that uh, even when I was a kid, I wanted to go around, just meet other people and please people, and just wanted to just make these connections for some reason. I was just always so passionate about it. Not my mom, not my dad, not my sister. None of them were interested in this, and I think that's something has to be said on the part. That's exactly why they're physicians or they're doctors or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and they love it. And I made them give this test and tons of other tests. It
Mm-hmm.
showed that they love what they do, and I'm meant for like people stuff. I could be that successful. My aims are to hopefully one day go to a good MBA Ivy League program, but I could be good, but I necessarily don't have to be a doctor for that matter. So that was
Mm-hmm.
my aha moment to see, wow, strengths did tell me that I was a woo.
Mm-hmm.
Strengths did tell me that I was an activator. Um, Nothing stopping me from being successful. It's just that I have to take the right trajectory for it.
Mm-hmm.
That was pretty much it, Andy.
Yeah, I mean that's uh, that's something really to be proud of, that you were able to not only experience that aha moment, but realize that you're a unique individual and you have the ability to kind of control your destiny. And others are going to expect things from you, but at the end of the day, um, what you've been given through natural talents and developed strengths is something that, if not harnessed, it's not going to serve its purpose. But if you choose to harness it, kind of corral those talents and focus them in a direction where you can ultimately be as successful as you want. There's really no ceiling to strengths-based development. There's no lid. There's nothing that you're going to ram into. Once you get, the sky is kind of the limit. And that's what I love about it. I mean, you can take your strengths and you can harness them and you can point them in a direction and just roll with it. And there's nobody that's going to be there to stiff arm you and tell you that you're wrong, because it feels so natural.
Right, absolutely.
So how do you apply your strengths? So you're aware. I mean, obviously you're a strengths aware person and you understand your top five and you understand what they mean. But Can you just give us an example of how you apply those in your everyday life? I mean, I know for myself with my woo and communication, I love to be in a large group of people where I have the opportunity to maybe get some space on that stage and share a message. And to me, when that happens, I'm firing on all cylinders and I feel great. Maybe you can give us a little bit of an example of how in your everyday life you can apply your strengths.
Hmm. So for Vue, it doesn't it's always needed. Whenever I
Mm-hmm.
need to make sure I can win people over, I'm activating that Vue part of me.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I have to focus, my fifth strength, I'll just activate the focus part of me. It'll be like, let's focus on this, let's hammer this down and just do good in it. So it's kind of like that. I have to like see which mode to go into, and tons of coaches that have helped me, and I'm very grateful for it, have told me you could shift your focus, you could shift your paradigm towards focus in order to uh, have your activator just calm down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one part of it, Andy. Um, yeah,
So as a student, do you find that it's easy for you to kind of call on your focus to sit down and study? And I mean, are you able to sit behind a desk and stare at a book for endless amounts of hours in preparation for a midterm or a final? Or do you find that your activator is like banging on the door saying, let me free, let's go on to the next thing, I'm done with this?
I think you're absolutely right. This no, my activator makes me want to just get up and just start changing things, and just so what I'll do is what I've found, this is a golden key for me. 2 hours, that's a 2 hour period. I cannot go with good concentration for more than 2 hours, so I'll change places, be on the go, just go to a new place, talk to some people, and then start over again. um, Focus is just so good. I think it's on the raw side of themes. I know someone had introduced a table that said, if you are on the raw side of things, then it's not, your strength hasn't been developed. I think focus
Mm-hmm.
hasn't been developed that much, Andy.
Yeah. Yeah, raw versus mature, and that's a product of Kurt Leesfield from Gallup. I mean, he does a remarkable job describing your raw talent, which basically means that it's just there. And I like to compare it to a garden hose that is just on full blast and has there's no way for you to control the flow of water. It's just there. Everywhere you point it, stuff's getting wet.
Right.
So you don't have a lot of control over it. But then, as you learn what that strength means, and you learn how that theme kind of reveals itself, and in what situations you can, again, another coin term through Kurt is either sharpen or temper that strength, and that's something that comes with maturity. I mean, just like anything, you're young and dumb in your strengths journey, and you want to just kind of use everything that you have and rip all the tools out of your toolbox. But at the end of the day, there's some that should probably remain in there given the situation. So the more you use your strengths and the more you understand how your top five operate and how they operate in conjunction with each other, you start to mature. And I think that's smart of you to realize that focus is still a raw theme for you. It's still a raw strength, and you're maturing with that. So, and your way of controlling that from getting way out of hand and having your activator just bust through like the Kool-Aid man. It's to take it 2 hours in
Right.
one spot and then relocate, readjust, refocus, kind of hit that mental reset button because you're not going to be able to do a marathon study session, and that's good. That's great that you can realize that about yourself because a lot of people don't, and
Thank
they'll
you. Yeah.
struggle. They'll struggle. They'll force themselves to sit there and study, and it'll have actually the reverse effect. So.
Absolutely, absolutely. One thing something to be pointed out here, Andy. Um, I literally used to study better when I'd be. This is weird.
Hmm.
In a bus, like if Purdue had like buses that obviously would pick you up from one spot to another.
Hmm.
If I was sitting in a bus and I was just studying, I saw that I was just learning all those medicines and side effects and stuff way
Hmm.
faster. This was just weird to me. People come in, people go out. Uh, I think that woo part of me and that activator part of me just kind of like give myself little breaks type of thing works, and then I'll sometimes just have my note cards and just start walking and
Hmm.
studying alongside, or just hear something that I've recorded earlier, one of the lectures, and listen back. I have to adjust to that activator.
Yeah, I think it would be safe to say that the reason you absorb the information and retain it better on a bus is the confinement of a bus. I mean, you don't have the opportunity to get up and walk around, and you don't
Yeah.
have the opportunity to really, socially engage everybody that's sitting around on the bus. It's just one of those environments where everybody's got their head down, they're listening to their iPod, they're not talking to each other. So you're kind of forced to say, well, I guess I'm going to have to my woo and my activator aren't going to do much right now because I'm on a bus. So, and then your focus kind of pops up, and that probably allows you to just become, learn more information, study better, and less distractions.
Good point, man. Good point. For
So
sure.
you mentioned that you had, some of your family take the assessment, and I always like to ask this question because I think it defines, or at least it reveals frequently coined terms and things that we hear when there's some resistance to taking the assessment. Because again, it is an assessment, and I know a lot of us are just tired. Especially if you're in the corporate world, or for me, when I was in the military, we're just tired of taking assessments. So, what kind of resistance do you receive, if any, when you go up to somebody and say, you really should take this StrengthsFinder assessment because I think it will reveal a lot about you, and be insanely insightful? And then what do they get? What do they say in return?
Sure. My my mom and my brother were the biggest resistance so far.
Mm-hmm.
So when I made my brother take this, he's in med school. So I was like, take this test, it's gonna help you. His answer was really like, I don't need to. I know me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all settled. And I'll tell you, most med school students or pharmacy students wouldn't, because because they see it as like, oh, I'm in a safe profession, all I gotta do is just study hard, I'll be good. What my qualities are or are not, it doesn't really matter to them, but I think it does. It changes their life altogether. um, so everyone should take it. After taking it, he didn't bother to read over those, but when I told him some insights of what it said, he said, yeah, you're sounding right, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, this was from the test that you just took. So that was one of the things. With my mom, she still didn't take the test, and she's a gynecologist. She was a gynecologist back home. She just doesn't want to, and I think something has to be said for, if she understands her strengths, it's just gonna help her. Uh, you
Mm-hmm.
know, uh, and I haven't seen a single person say, "Oh, I took it and it's not worth it." I worked at American Red Cross. I made my CEO take it. She had
Mm-hmm.
resistance and issues. She's like, "Is it worth the nine 99?" I was like, "Just take it." She took it, and I was like, "Did you like it?" She's like, "Wow, it was just wonderful stuff. It described me as I am, and I'm happy that you told me it's worth the price." So resistance is there, but then the flip side, the benefits of which are far much greater than the price that it has.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
that's great to hear. I mean, Uh, I'll be the first to say that even though I host this podcast and I consider myself a strengths evangelist, I was very um, resistant to taking another assessment. And a lot of people who follow me on social media and stuff, they know this, but my assessment results sat in my desk drawer for 11 months. So
Wow.
almost a full year before I even acknowledged what that had revealed and what my top five were. And it wasn't until somebody approached me and said, I was having problems with my business, and the gentleman approached me and said, "Well, you're not. Everything you're doing is the polar opposite of what your strengths have revealed and what you're really naturally good at. So you're struggling. You're really against the grain. I mean, there's so much friction in your forward momentum that by the end of the week, you get so bogged down, you're out of energy, and you're just upset and kind of saddened by the lack of progress you've had." And we looked back at my strengths assessment and we looked at my top five, and I read the report and I highlighted key points that I thought really uh, kind of hit close to home, and they were me. I mean, they were just like somebody was describing me. And then we sat down one other time, and he gave me the nudge I needed to follow through and do my research. And I think that's when you meet people like myself who had resistance, really the proof is in the pudding. And one of the great way to kind of lubricate that process is to just be passionate about how it's helped you and how it's kind of changed the way that you live your life. And that's a great starting point.
Can I ask you a question here, Andy?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the biggest change you think it has had for you, the best so far?
Oh, without a doubt, it's allowed me to kind of reprioritize my daily tasks. back when I started my business, I felt like I needed to be a jack of all trades. I needed to be the guy. Not only did I need to understand how to create content, how to promote myself, and how to market my service offerings, but I also needed how to knew how. I also had to know how to balance a budget and do taxes to come tax time, and I had to do all that other logistical behind the scenes stuff that I absolutely just hated. But
Really?
I felt that if I didn't learn how to do that, then I wasn't going to succeed. I had
Wow.
to be well rounded. And strengths revealed to me that that was killing me. I mean, that was just destroying me. And so what I did is I had my wife take this StrengthsFinder assessment, a few other people, and then I kind of looked around and I started to leverage the strengths of others so we could collaborate and they could do those things because they were very talented at it. The information was accurate, it was spot on, it looked good, it bettered my business, and I could focus on the things that I was good at, and that was networking, building social connections, public relations, content creation. And once I did that and I spent most of my time concentrating on what really fulfilled me and what gave me a high level of engagement, the business started to succeed again. The clients started to come back. I mean, people could tell a difference in my personality and especially in my mood.
Wow.
And everything was getting done. That's the cool part is there was no gaps in the system. I mean, it's not like the checkbook was no longer balanced or the account was just bleeding full of money and I didn't know where to put things. Like, the stuff was getting done. It just wasn't me doing it. And I had to relinquish that control. But, people sometimes are control freaks and they want to have control of everything. But I
Right.
think strengths reveals that you're going to hurt yourself
Right.
unless you know how to do all those things effectively.
Absolutely.
So yeah, you flipped the interview on me, Omar. But yeah,
I was trying to activate you, you see.
yeah, very good. So now it's my turn to ask the question. So what would you share? Let's say we put you in a room with somebody who you know them, you don't have to know them, they can be an acquaintance, but they're just sitting there and they're looking at the results as it just came out of the printer. The paper is still warm, still got you can almost smudge the ink. I mean, it's brand new. They're brand new to strengths, and they're sitting there and they're slightly confused, kind of scratching their temple looking at this. What advice would you give somebody to take that initial first step in developing a life full of strengths?
I'll just tell them like the biggest example to me is look at it. It's used by Stryker, and so that's the eighth best medical devices company,
Mm.
billions of dollars. It's used by Wells Fargo. I mean, why wouldn't you? Seriously, I mean, is there even a question? How many other tests like that are just used by by those platforms? So it's a big say in if everyone around the world is saying Strengths 2.0 was such a hit, then there's really no reason. I mean, I'm convinced. Why shouldn't they be convinced to take it? And if 9.99 is, do you think that it's not worth it? I think so. Truly, some things in life are just priceless. Would I put $90 worth of price on this? No. I think it's worth $900. No, it's worth 9,000. It's worth 90,000. It's gonna change your life. Why wouldn't you want to know what you're strong about? So,
So
it's
say you didn't have to sell them on the. I mean, it sounds like you're actually
oh,
just trying to sell the person on the fact that it's a quality assessment. But my question's more geared towards what would you give them as step one? So they say, okay, now I know my top five. What next?
Oh, gotcha. I think there's coaches out there, or try joining Call to Coach. There's wonderful people out there that just selflessly are helping all the time. I've had tons of coaches. They have literally changed my life. I'm so grateful for that. And such people are just not to be found all around the world. It's just rare. So once you take the test, come to Call to Coach, read the assessments, highlight the parts that you think are important. Uh, any keywords that click out to you, just highlight them. One of the coaches told me to just highlight them threefold: green with what you truly agree with, orange with something you kind of, red with something you think it doesn't agree with you, stuff that you think is not absolutely true. So stuff like that. And then just make notes about how you really apply that to your day-to-day life. That matters, that changes you as a person. And see how you could flip your strengths from one to another. A journal or something would help. Talking to one of the coaches up on Call to Coach would help. Um, Getting insights on it and bettering yourself. It's a process of improve. You improve yourself over a period of time. It's not going to happen in a day or two. What else could they do. There's tons of resources. There's stuff Kurt posts, there's stuff Jim Collison posts, there's tons of stuff they post all the time. If you're following that page, you should be able to get good insight about how about all kinds of things. What do you think, Andy?
No, I think that's great advice. I mean, there's utilize the resources that exist. Um, yeah, for instance, on my webpage UnleashStrengths.com, I post 5 steps to kickstarting your top 5, and I'm on 4 or 5 right now, and it's just really simplistic action steps that you can take that require very, very little time, and you can apply them every single day. Just not only the biggest thing is you want to learn how your top 5 react in certain situations. So you want to be able to be mindful, self-aware of when these strengths pop up, when these themes become evident, not only to you, but also to those around you. So one of the other great steps that I always tell, or tricks I always tell people to do, is ask your family, your friends, reveal your report to them and say, hey, this makes sense to me. Does it make sense
Right.
to you? And allow them to read it. That's a great way really to get, I mean, if you want a no nonsense answer, just start asking other people, because hopefully they'll be honest with you.
Good point.
So
Absolutely.
this is our last question, but looking back, say StrengthsFinder has never entered your life. How do you think things would be different for you today?
Yeah, I'd be on to another medical profession. Just next thing, I don't even know. I'd be looking down on my weaknesses and just looking at it. I think strengths has shown me, like throughout pharmacy school, my whole thing was if I could take my weaknesses up a little, my strengths are right here. So my level could go a whole level up. That was the whole thing around it. Now I know if you capitalize on your strengths, your world can change, and that's
Mhm.
that's what if you find out your calling and passion, which I'm really working on these days, and if you align it with what's good in the world, what pays well in the world, and what you like doing, what's your calling, what you like doing, and what's good in the world. Align those three, um, and taking care of your strengths at the same time, you'll just have the best profession. So I think I've seen strengths is a crucial part. Everyone who's happy and
Mhm.
successful are using their strengths and following their passion. So
Right.
something's to be said for that for sure.
Well, very good, sir. All right. Before we close this podcast out, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to tell us some more about themselves. If you want to go ahead and throw out some contact information, if people are listening to this podcast and say, I like what that guy had to say, I want to kind of pick his brain a little bit more. Maybe you just want to reveal where they can find you, or just maybe hit you up on Facebook as you're cruising around the Call to Coach scene. Go ahead and just tell us a little bit about, if you're willing to, go ahead and reveal some of that stuff.
Sure. So if anyone wants to help me with the information that I gave, I would love that. I always do. My email is mmirza@purdue.edu, and hopefully, we can post that too. I'm on Facebook, on Call to Coach, and anything I could help with, or anything you think you could help me with, anyone's welcome to be a part of my life. I love that journey,
Hmm.
just having good mentors and giving back at the same time.
Yeah, well said. Mentorship is truly a missing piece in most people's lives, and it's great when you do have somebody who's out there looking out for the best for you. So, all right, Omar. Well, thank you for joining us today on Thematics. As always, this is Andy from UnleashStrengths.com. If you want to follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/UnleashStrengths. Hit us up on Twitter at UnleashCSF. Again, that's UnleashCSF. So that's all we have today. Thanks for listening to Thematics, and we'll talk to you soon. See ya.